This week on the AI in Sales podcast, we look at how AI can help salespeople connect not only with the right person in an organization, but also connect on a personal level. We'll talk to Bruce LeWolt, who is the co-founder of Joy AI, an AI platform that helps you find the ideal prospect, build the perfect sales playbook, and helps your salespeople sell in the most effective way. We talk specifically about how Joy AI will help you communicate more effectively when prospecting over the phone or via email, and how Joy AI uses big data to identify the buying profile of a company so you can adjust your message to achieve resonance. All this and a proof in the pudding moment when Bruce shares how Joy AI helps him overcome his fear of cold calling. With that said, let's jump into it. Bruce, so here's my first question for you. And I think it's a good starting point. Why Joy AI? What problem did you see in the market that said, we need a product to fill this hole in the market? Talk to me about the problem and what you decided to do.
Sure. So I've been training salespeople for a long time, trained well over 100,000 people, developed training technology, and I've seen people do good training. I've seen, in addition to that, the market spend billions and billions of dollars on sales enablement technology. And yet every single year, all the national statistics show that sales is getting harder at a much faster rate than salespeople and sales technology is getting better. And so sales effectiveness is dropped every single year. And so we knew we needed some game changer thing, and that's why we got into it.
And that makes sense. Consumers are more intelligent. I think Google had this study where they said people look at 10 sources of information before they reach out. If you remember the book, The Challenger Sale, they talked about buyers are 57% into the buying cycle, if not more, which means their preferences are formed. So they're much smarter. And so salespeople have to be smarter. And I think it's CSO Insight that had an interesting stat that talked about over the last 5 years, salespeople hitting their quota has gone down. And I think that's fascinating for the last 5 years. I think now the close rate's people hitting their close rate's about 53% of total population of salespeople. So you saw that sales effectiveness is going down. So what are you thinking at this point? Why Joy? Explain to us what Joy AI is.
Sure. So what Joy AI is a system that looks at lots of different data sources and can figure out for a given person what their core driving motivations are in relation to sales, selling something. In other words, are they very risk averse in their approach they take? Do they love new, innovative, and want to be out in the front of things? Do they care more about how this affects their people than even how it affects their business? Many, many different things that are critical, but also the personality of the business and how that fits. And so it pulls those things together and then does things like finds the people with the ideal temperament for your product and business. Some companies do really well with people that are very analytical. Some people don't do well with those people. Some companies and products don't do well with those people at all. Then once we find the right people, then how do you get a conversation started with them? So if you're using a cold calling or some other tool, what's the right tone of voice? What's the right script? Joy actually writes, it shows the salesperson that information about tonality and script. And then if you have a presentation, one of the things I find is effective selling is so difficult and so personalized that salespeople just don't have the time or wherewithal to prepare well for each call. So Joy prepares a call plan.
I like that. Let's kind of break that apart a little bit, Bruce, because there was some good stuff in there. And so let's kind of start tearing this apart a little bit so we can understand it, maybe give it some context so my listeners can understand. The first piece I think is really interesting, and it caught my attention when I looked at your website, looked at the product, and that is the personality and communication style. It's almost like Joy allows some type of, I hate to say it this way, Bruce, but like matchmaking for you to understand who you're talking to by personality style, communication style. Expand on that a little bit, how Joy AI can help a salesperson, I guess, align themselves better personality-wise.
Yeah, right. So I'll give you experience. I just literally, I try to be an example to my team. So I do the hard things that I expect them to do. And so I got on the phone to do cold calls today. Was on the phone for 90 minutes doing cold calls.
Good for you, by the way. Good for you. Good for you.
but I hate doing cold calls. I'm actually pretty sensitive. Don't tell my staff, but my feelings get hurt easily. I really, really do not like making cold calls.
So in other words, you're normal is what you're telling me. You're very
I
normal.
guess so. Yeah, right. I think the best cold callers are borderline corporate psychopaths. They don't care, whatever. Anyway, so I get on the phone. I do this, and I use a tool. That's a dialing, or it just helps me connect with people. I'm using Connect and Sell to do that, and but each time they get somebody to answer the phone, there's this tool called Joy Sidecar that pops up, tells me that my tonality of voice. I should be upbeat and energetic. I should be very even toned and analytical. I should be a bit introspective in my tone. And so it tells me to do that so that I am like the customer. Now, Joy's already figured out this person's personality style from their social media presence. So she knows what it is. And it turns out people like people who communicate like them.
Now let's pause, Bruce. Let's pause there for a moment because this is too important to skip over. What you just said was really key. Is that Joy pulls their personality type from?
Yes. So it looks at several different. There's no one source that works for everybody, but there's different publicly available data, and it turns out that how people interact in those things, their core things about how they like to communicate, bubbles up to the surface if you can get information over time. So one interaction or two is never enough. But just like this conversation here, if we met for the first time and you might not know me that well and not know how to communicate, but, if we met 5, 10 times, you'd get to understand my communication style, what was important to me. Those things bubble up to the surface. They're just more common. Same thing with social media or other types of databases that are available that are public information. The core things about how you like to communicate, what drives you bubble to the surface. Joy just has this amazing ability, because she's AI, to figure out what's relevant, separate what's relevant from what's not, and then look for the right patterns.
So this allows you to really understand, even communicating with a person for the first time, and I'm repeating because I want to make sure we all got it, and that is that you kind of know what their personality is already, their communication style. In other words, is this person a take-control person? Is this person a socializer, introvert, extrovert? What's their communication style? Do they like to socialize? Do they like data? So forth and so on. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah. In fact, so on this call, one of the guys at the end, he was very soft, introspective type of person. He thanked me. He says, I appreciated this conversation so much. Every cold caller who calls me is overly aggressive, and I just hate it. But you were very kind, understanding. We had a good conversation. And this is somebody that won't be ready for our product for a few months. But that's fine. In fact, back to the stat on, people being 70% through the process. If people are 70% through their buying process, you've already lost. The key is to get there and figure out beforehand. I agree. When it is. But anyway, back to the point. I had modulated my voice. I had been more introspective, and it worked really well. And the things that I talked about were things that Joy knew that would probably be his hot button, very risk-averse type of person. So
got it. I love that. And let me jump over to you have something called, I believe it's vocalization prompts or dialogues. And for those of you listening to the podcast, to visualize this, because I had to see it, Bruce had to show it to me. And it was really interesting because depending on how you were to say something, what you were to emphasize, I'll call these dialogue cards would pop up. And the different color codes would basically dictate, the type of tone I should take, and maybe even how I said certain things. Expand a little bit on that, Bruce.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you can imagine there are some people, especially that I call on, that are just the opposite of the guy that I just mentioned. They are very to the point. They see themselves as a winner, and they only want to do business with winners. I've got to be very upfront, very strong in the way I have, very, very confident in what I model. I have to create a frame of being really, really confident. There's other people that are very happy, very social, love energetic people, love people that talk about other people, and I just have to be that way. Well, sales is not about the salesperson. It is not about me. It's about the other person. So if I'm professional, I need to be what the other person needs me to be. And that's what Joy allows me to be by giving me these cues. So when I'm connected to somebody, at the instant they pick up that phone, it shows their name, it gives me a cue as to what my tonality should be, and then has a color-coded script. And the color coding has the different things about what my tonality should be, right down to when I should have a downbeat versus an upbeat. Salesperson, people always give away that they're a typical salesperson by saying, "Hi, this is Bruce LeWolt from Joy AI." Well, the uptone just goes, "Oh, no, another salesperson." But if you do authority, "Hi, this is Bruce LeWolt from Joy AI," the downbeat is authority. And people go, "Oh, wait a minute, that's different. I better listen to this."
Yeah, I love that. That's powerful. You know what I mean? Because it's those subtleties. And I think it was the great Zig Ziglar who said that one of the most underutilized tools every salesperson has is their voice. He was talking about, tone, intonation, how we say things, inflections, and that's what you're pointing out. What I love about the Joy AI, it's almost like an emotionally, what do you call it? Emotionally intelligent machine almost.
Yeah, it's just, it just accelerates my performance by giving me this information. It's my sales engineer or my, whatever you want to do it, call it, that figures this out and works with me. And it's powerful. I talked in that 90 minutes. I had 11 conversations with people. In those 11 conversations, I set 2 appointments, the firm appointments. I had 2 other people that wanted follow-up email to socialize and then get back to them to set an appointment. Only one person hung up at me, and that was right at the very beginning. And that's pretty good to only get one, especially for me. And the rest of them, we had a good conversation, but I qualified them. They were just too small to be able to do anything from a technology standpoint. They only had 1 or 2 salespeople. But we were able to qualify that, which helps me condense my lead list.
I don't know what the call to appointment ratio is or should be. But, 2 appointments out of 11 calls. I don't know. I'm thinking win here.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
That's a win.
I think the stats are that most cold callers call an entire week and only set 1 to 2 appointments a week.
Wow. That's powerful.
And so we did this. Now, remember, Joy had found these leads for me. And so there were lots of things about that we knew need state that were there. It was just she right now we're working on teaching her how to do this. She isn't able to figure out how many salespeople the company has, but still, so they had the right need state. So I was talking in my zone, and then she gave me all the information to have a conversation, to get the people into a conversation from a cold call.
Love it. And by the way, that's a perfect segue into the next thing I saw that was really interesting. And this one I really want you to expand on because I think this is interesting. When we look at a diffusion curve, where are people at in their buying stage, right? Or what type of, personalities they are when it comes to buying. There's the innovator, the early adopter, early majority, late majority, laggards, for anybody who read the book Crossing the Chasm, so forth and so on. Talk to me about how Joy could help me line myself up with a company that's in the right stage for my product or service.
Yeah. So let me give you an example. So we had a company that we went to. They were having no success. So their cold callers were literally setting no appointments. So they hired an outsource firm, one of the best outsourced firms, to make appointments. Cold call. Those people were making no appointments. So, and they called on CTOs in a specific segment of the market. And so we profiled. We found 10,000. Joy found 10,000 of those people. We profiled them all. And it was amazing that these people were far more risk averse than the average CTO. And so what we found is we go to this company's website, and all their messages were for early adopters. Join our early adopter program. Well, somebody that's risk averse, especially in the laggard category, when they see join our early adopter program, they run for the hills. They say, I'm not going to be your guinea pig. So first thing we did is we changed the website messages. Second thing is we did a strategy, a very specific strategy of pre-emails for people that are risk averse that works really well. And then we started calling with the right messages. So what happened with that? These are very high-level people in big companies, and they are people went from setting no appointments to setting an appointment on average of one every 3 hours.
Love it. So let me kind of recap that, because again, I think that's interesting and it's really fascinating. And that is that if I'm the company, the example you're giving, I was a company and I viewed myself I had an innovative product. Mm-hmm. So, and that's kind of what I'm saying all over my website. But when I'm reaching out to my customers, who I think is my target audience, they're risk averse. So my message is not aligned. And when they visit my website, they're going, these guys are too early into the game. That's not us. Mm-hmm. And so basically, by understanding that dynamic, the innovative company, might now move over to a more risk-averse type of language and communication with that company. Is that about right?
That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. And there's a number of strategies that you could use. So let's say you're a startup. You are at the cutting edge of innovation. You've got to create a mental model in the risk-averse prospect's mind that you've been around a while, and a certain thing. There's a number of different things that you need to embed in their mind that you do with a pre-email campaign that might go on for several weeks before you call, and then this recognition of that you're in my camp, the camp that I like, comes up in their mind when they hear your name. Because if you don't, you're toast, and don't even bother cold calling them.
Correct. I love that. The other thing I want to bring up is that, and I think you mentioned this briefly, you kind of skipped over it very quickly, but that once you understand their style, their needs, that Joy can help you construct the message or the presentation that you should deliver.
Yeah. So when you're presenting, it will do a really good job, and sometimes it'll tell you who you shouldn't even bother presenting to as well, because it's just not going to work for what you do. So we can talk about that in a minute. But essentially, if you think about it, lots of different people, and you know yourself, what kind of presentation you like. You might be very detail oriented, so you want how this thing works, nuts and bolts. Show me how it works. You may also be somebody that's, I don't care. Let's just do the business case. I really need to know the business case. Or I said, the people that really care about the impact on people. So that's great. And at the surface level, I just gave you some things you do at surface level. But when you think about your selling strategy, it has to really change. So let's take something that every salesperson knows: qualifying. On need, pain, and the of what you're going to do, or the opportunity for gain, but also there's cost associated with it. So your qualification process, as somebody that's very people oriented, you need to dig deep in who is this going to affect, how is this going to affect your people, and get them to tell you about that. Because if you don't uncover the real cost of change to them, which in this case is emotional far more than numbers, you're going to go all the way through. You're going to think you have the deal, and they're going to just never call you back, because you haven't dealt with the real issue. Is they're afraid of what their people are going to think or how this impact. Whereas there are other people, they could care less about the impact of their people. They really want to know the bottom line. And there's other people that in that qualification, you've got to look at the change of process and what the real change of process is. So that's just one of the many ways that Joy would build a selling strategy, soup to nuts selling strategy, and then reach into this library of slides that we would have created and programmed into Joy for your product and company, and build out the exact right deck.
Gotcha.
Selling strategy comes first, I guess, is the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and also, by the way, from a sales perspective, or I guess a sales activity perspective, if I have, let's say, a tool like Joy that could use AI to actually help me build a presentation, that's going to save me a lot of time. I don't know if anybody's ever done a study about how much time salespeople spend on creating presentations, but I'm sure it's quite a bit. And so I can see that as a useful tool. In wrapping up here, Bruce, going forward, you're seeing all the changes in AI. You're seeing all these new players come on the market. What are give me some, play a prognosticator here. Looking forward, what do you see? What are some of the trends in AI, machine learning, or sales integration, sales acceleration? What do you see coming down the pipe?
So this is interesting.
Go ahead.
I've been around a long time, watched lots of technology innovations or transitions in sales. They all take place over a bunch of years. And I'd almost, in every other case, I would have recommended you wait a year or two, see what shakes out. AI is different. AI is such a radical game changer that it's very dangerous to wait. Here's what happens. So let's say I go into your competitor and I set this up and I get your competitor to talk to every potential customer 2, 3, 4 months before you know they're even a potential customer. So my guys have gotten in, created a relationship, and set the standard. And by the way, I've taught them to inoculate the customer against you. Sorry. So your guy walks in, they're already most of the way through the deal. My guys have set the agenda, have the relationship. You call because you see that, they look, there's some information or some social signals that maybe they're ready. You're toast. From a psychological standpoint, since I have a friend relationship, you come into that. Their brain is predisposed to look for reasons why they should not do business with you and magnify the importance of those reasons.
Yep.
And so if you wait, you're the second to the market. It's not like, you can just do the same thing and catch up. You've already lost. Your prospect base just starts drying up. So that's the difference here. That's why it's so important to evaluate things now. And then you just need to look at, there's stuff that are just, do a piece of things. They're usually in-app. There's things for Salesforce and others that work inside. And there are things more that take this comprehensive soup to nuts approach, like what Joy AI does. You just need to get smart on what's the best thing for you.
No, I love it. The fact that you can ID potential customers early, I think I'm not going to say that's new, but that's helpful, right? But I also think, as I'm listening to you, I'm taken back to the book that was written like 30 years ago by Jim Cathcart, I think, called Relationship Selling.
Yeah, I know Jim. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
good friend of mine as well. And so it's almost like Joy AI's Relationship Selling 3.0 or just, Relationship Selling.ai. I don't know.
Right. It's something like that. And it is smart selling that way.
Yes.
Because if you look at Jim's book and relationship and you look at what Challenger said about that. So Challenger would say that in certain, in certain cases, this didn't work. And people think, I should use Challenger in all cases.
No.
Well, that is not so.
By the way, and by the way, in defense of the folks over at CEB who wrote the book, they said that we all have a little bit of the 5 characteristics.
Right.
One is more dominant, but again, it's all context based, isn't it?
Well, it's all personality based because there are people you should never, ever, ever use the Challenger on.
Correct. There you go.
And these are people that have a very high competitive drive because as soon as you challenge, competition, I'm going to win.
Yep.
Business problem goes out the door. Winning the challenge. Who are you to tell me, no, I know my business? And you can use subtle as you want, but you're going to get into a challenge. And as soon as you do, they're going to interpret that as this is another area for me to win.
I got it. I think you should market Joy AI as Relationship Selling 3.0 or
there you go. Okay.
AI. Maybe get together with Jim and write a new book around that. So that'd be great.
There you go.
All right. Any final words, Bruce?
No, I just, this is a fun thing to watch. Get involved. Learn. It's not complex, so you're just, this is probably the most important thing of everything. Test it yourself with your people. Do not buy anything based on a demo, what worked for somebody else. If you can't bring it in, test drive it with your people and measure results yourself, then don't buy it because AI is so powerful, it should give you instant results. It shouldn't wait 6 months, a year, even a month. You should see the results the day you start using it. So if you can't test drive it, and it doesn't give you those kind of results that you can see instantly, it's probably fake AI,
all right,
which is just something covered over. So there you go. Okay.
All right, Bruce. On that note, I thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye-bye.